definitely the biggest one for me, and I don't know if it's a hack, it's more of like a foundational thing, and that is you got to know who you're serving. And for me to be able to describe that ideal customer profile as a person, so an avatar, I think is the term. A lot of people like to just glaze over that and say, I help people do this or I help people do that. And they focus so much on being able to say it in one sentence, which I think is important as well, because you got to be able to deliver to somebody in a short 2 to 3 second window what you do.
Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. We want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around.
Jerry Dugan is the host and author of Beyond the Rut. Create a life worth living in your faith, family, and career. As the founder of BTR Impact, he helps leaders expel employee satisfaction and stem the turnover tide so that they can have a beyond the rut impact in their lives and with their teams. He is married to his wife, Olivia, for the past 22 years, and counting. They raised 2 children, are now empty nesters with 3 cats, a dog, and no car loans.
Jerry, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Junaid, I'm glad to be here. I'm excited. Cool backdrop, by the way. I can't get over it. Looks good. It's like you do video for professionally or something. Okay, I'm back.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. So what I love to do with the conversation, and thank you for the comment on the backdrop, it's something that I've really aspired for. Like when I was watching Pat Flynn 3 years ago do those daily live streams, I'm like, holy smokes, dude, what are you doing in there? And then he posted the list of equipment that he was using. I was like, okay, I have all that gear. Like, why I'm not using it in my space? So I finally spent some time, put the studio together, and people start asking me, what happened? What's going on over here? What did you do? I'm like, well, I have an experience in video production for shooting documentaries and commercials. So kind of started helping people and built a company around it called Home Studio Mastery. And it's just been a lot of fun because I get to play with toys and play with tech that I like absolutely love, and now, helping others figure that out. And now, too much about me. Let's talk about you, Jerry. I know we just even last week when we got together, I was like, hey, meet Ed Squire. And you guys started talking. I'm like, okay, now I can go and do the work that I was working
So
around.
I was distracted for Ed.
It was I was like, here, Ed, distract Jerry. So I can or it was more like Jerry distract Ed, or one or the other. Anyways, it was really good. Like I got to connect you guys. You've got an amazing podcast, and I can't wait to dig into what it is and how you got into it. So let's take a walk through memory lane and rediscover your origin story. Like the journey is so long. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, how did we even get here? So I want to highlight, how you got started. And so tell the audience, what got you started? How'd you get here?
Man. So January, well, I don't know when this will actually air, but January 2024 will be 10 years in the space of podcasting.
Oh, amazing.
It started with, I had a blog leading up to that time that talked about being an authentic man, being the best father and husband you can be, and didn't get a whole lot of readership, but just something deep down in me, I wanted to inspire other men to just that, to be the best husband and father they can be with their families. And I thought, blogs are cool and all, but if I want to be a speaker about this topic, I need to actually be speaking about the topic. And I was listening to some podcasts at the time. They were Christian marriage type of podcasts. And one of the shows, while I was on this jog, because it was January 1st, 2014, what do we all do when we, get new shoes for Christmas? We go running on January 1st, and we're like, oh, that sucks. I'm never running again, which is exactly what happened, by the way. And so while I was like maybe a mile into this, I'll say a mile, it probably wasn't, it just hit me. I'm like, I'm listening to podcasts. I could start a podcast. And on top of that, these hosts are talking to their children about a healthy family dynamic, but I can clearly tell that child doesn't want to be on that show, doesn't want to be on that microphone, wants to just go off and play. And on top of that, the hosts are kind of like feeding the answers or guiding the child to answer the way they want the answer to come out, because they're like, oh yeah, so when we have trouble, we talk through it, right? Yeah. And, sometimes, we have the emotions, they come out
Mm.
and we learn to take a deep breath, right? And so it was like, oh, like, if it was a court case, I'd be yelling, "Objection, Your Honor," leading the witness, that kind of thing. And I just thought, it'd be great and refreshing if one of these family shows had a dad who was dumb enough to just let his family open up and
Mm.
throw him under the bus. This is what you're doing well. However, this is what you could be doing better. I was like, we need a show like that, where the dad
Mm.
is dumb enough to let the kids just have an open mic and go to town and post that unedited. And it just hit me. I'm like, I could be that guy.
Mm.
And so I didn't run home because it was already a mile, and I was like, so I walked briskly home, and I was thinking in my head, this will be a father-son show. Walked in the door, my son was playing video games. He was probably about 12 at the time. I was like, "Hey,
Mhm.
son, I got an idea. Let's do a father-son podcast. You ask me any question you want, I answer, and that's it. I don't know what the question is. I'm not allowed
Mhm.
to edit. I'm not allowed
Yeah.
to have you redirect. I don't get any redos. The first thing out of my mouth, that's my answer." And I'm expecting him to say, "Yeah, that'd be awesome, Dad. Let's do this." No,
Nope.
he looked right at my wife, who was like 10 feet away, wondering why I came through the door so excited. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Do I have to?" And I was like, oh, like, there goes my dream that lasted about
Mhm.
20 minutes of having a father-son podcast where my son could ask anything. But just like in Star Wars, there was another child, and
Yeah.
my daughter, like, she comes leaping out of nowhere. I'm like, "Where did you come from?" She's like, "Dad, I'll be on your show. We can
Mhm.
do this." Like, it's a fun, I'm trying to get out of this now. Like, my dreams have been crushed. I haven't healed from this wound yet. And here's my daughter saying we could do this. And I'm like, "But it was a father-son show." And she's like, "Now it's a father-daughter show. Let's go." And I'm like, "But I don't have equipment. I don't have a microphone."
Mm.
She's like, "You've got a phone. We could record on there. I've been doing my homework. I want my own or my own." She wanted her own YouTube channel at like
Yeah.
9 or 10 years old. So she knew her stuff. She knew her homework. And yeah, within 20 minutes, we were in my room firing up my phone on the voice recorder on a Samsung Galaxy
Mhm.
S5. So if that brings numbers for you guys. And there we are. I asked her, she asked me the first question, which at the time I wrote like an ebook that I hope I pulled off of Amazon. It was how to use your smartphone to lose weight. And it was just that. It was my 2013 journey of losing
Mm.
something like 60 pounds using my smartphone as a trainer, which now today
Nice.
that's no big deal.
Yeah.
And she just asked me that was her question. I'm like, "Oh wow, you let me off easy." And she said, "But I've got an idea, Dad. How about you ask me a question I'm not ready for? And same deal. Whatever comes out of my mouth, that's
Mm.
the answer." I'm like, "Great." So I asked her, because I had to be like the good, serious dad now. I'm like, "What could I do to be a better dad for you?" And she's like, "All right, cool. You know how when you play video games with Jacob and you start to rage quit?" I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Wait, what?
Rage quit.
I thought we taught you to speak English in here. What is this?" And she's laughing. She knows she's got me. Like, she
Mhm.
she gave me a nice little softball lob on her
Yeah.
question. She nailed me when I asked her my question, and I'm like, "This is the first episode, and she's already thrown me under the bus." And
Mhm.
I remember, just an hour ago, I asked for this. Like,
You
I thought
did
this
ask
was
for it.
gonna
You gotta
be
get what you asked for, right?
yeah, and she, I can't lie to my daughter. I made a promise, whatever. I can't be prepared for the question. Turns out I couldn't
Mhm.
be prepared for the answer either.
Yeah.
And whatever comes out of our mouths, that's it. And I was like, "All right, yeah, I know what you're talking about." She goes, "Well, stop it." "We know it's just a game. We know you're mad at the game, but it's scary and you need to stop doing that." And I'm like, "But I love those games." I'm like trying to be all funny. She said, "Well, scares it scares your son." And I'm like, "How old are you again?" Like, so that was the start of Family Time Q&A. That show ran for
Mhm.
86 episodes because of Emma being so bold and jumping in there at 10 years old. My
Mhm.
wife said, "Well, maybe I'll jump in there." I'm like, "Oh boy,
Mhm.
I'm in trouble." And we eventually got my son to do so it was a rotation. So I was on almost every episode,
Yeah.
and then a different family member would get on, and I got roasted so many times. I got held to the fire so many times to just be a better person. I thought,
Yeah.
wow, that really truly It was what I asked for. Like, a show where the dad was dumb enough to put himself out there, and I thought nobody listened to it but myself and my mom, but,
Mm-hmm.
friends at church started to pick up on it, and they're like, "I love
Well,
your
yeah.
show. I love the honesty you have with your kids, and I strive for that at my home, and it's
Mm-hmm.
made me a better father," and, that probably impacted maybe 10 people I know of, and
A lot more that you don't know of.
exactly, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the show's still out there mainly because, I mean, our daughter now is 20, almost
Mm-hmm.
21, our son's 22.
Yeah.
They sound so stinking little in these episodes because they were like elementary and barely getting into middle school, and so
Yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
little voices were still there, and, over the course of the 86 episodes, you hear my son's voice start to get deeper
Oh
because
yeah.
he
Oh yeah.
yeah, so it cracks on some episodes, it starts to get teenager sounding, and then eventually it gets deep, and you're like, "Whoa, he replaced his
I
son with a
know
man."
exactly the thing you're talking about because my son, he's not 13, but they started a YouTube channel when he was like, how old are you? He was like 11, and he was 11,
Oh,
and my
yeah.
younger son was, you know, 6 years old. So they were both on there, and you could hear their voice change over time. And he
Mm.
had braces. Like now he doesn't have braces, so he's like uses the word cringe, like oh those were just for cringe. But it was the growth experience that they had to go through to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's you have to go through those experiences to grow. It's there's no way around it. There's no way to get to the top of the hill without spending energy because either you apply physical energy or you pay somebody to fly you up to the top on
Right.
helicopter. And sometimes
Yeah.
helicopter won't make up there because of the thinness of the oxygen up there
Right?
too.
Yeah, and then you wind up crashing and you become a movie subject. The daring
Exactly.
rescue of Jerry in his helicopter. Man. So, yeah, towards the end of that show, my
Hmm.
friend Brandon had come along, and I knew Brandon from church ministry and another guy, Sean, and the three of us got together, and we wanted to start a show that was geared specifically to men who are married. They've got kids. They got all the boxes checked for success, but they feel
Right.
stuck. And so that's how Beyond the Rut came to be in August
Uh,
2015. And it was just really good timing because I was really enjoying this podcasting medium. And at the same time, my family kind of quit. I
they're
say it
like, we're done
harshly,
with
but
this, Dad. Uh-huh.
yeah, like now they were getting into like, they were like deep in middle school, going into high school. They were too cool for my show, too busy, really, because my daughter was doing dance, my son was doing baseball,
Hmm.
and Olivia, my wife, was really their Uber, their free Uber. She got 0 tips. They never rated her 5 stars, which shame on them. Um, and so, yeah, I didn't have a show anymore. And I wasn't going to do it solo because family time Q&A without a family to Q&A with sounded
Yeah.
stupid. So when Beyond the Rut came along, we spent 9 months designing the show before we
Mm.
launched. I know Sean wanted it to be perfect.
Yeah.
Brandon and I were just sort of like, you just fire up the mic. The first 20 episodes don't count anyway. Like,
No, they
we
don't.
got to pay our dues. Yeah. So we knew that stat that most shows quit before. At that time, it was like before their 7th episode. And it took about 20 episodes for the internet to kind of discover you. And so we knew we had to get over those 2 humps to
Hmm.
really make a difference. And within 16 episodes, Sean had stepped away. 5 years after that, Brandon, he also stepped away, and he was just like, yeah, I feel like we're kind of stale. We're not really going anywhere. But that's about when I got fired up. Not because he was quitting, but because I had just gone to another podcast movement. And I think
Yeah.
this was it was the online one because it was COVID. And then before that, I was at the one in Orlando. And so I had
Hmm.
notes I wanted to act on and
Yeah.
implement. And here's the host saying, I'm done. And I'm like, I'm not. And he handed everything to me. He said, I
Hmm.
asked him if I could take over the show. He said, yes, that'd be awesome. I think you'd do well with it. I kept the emails just in case there was ever, like, hey, I changed my mind. I want back.
Yeah.
Wait, no,
Yeah.
you did,
Exactly.
sir. And I just went to town. I started implementing everything. I started tightening up. Turns out we got way far away from our niche audience.
Hmm.
And so we were never niche to begin with, it turns out. And so I've been working on that over the last 12 months. So, I mean, we Beyond the Rut just celebrated its 8th anniversary a couple weeks ago, right before podcast movement
That's
2023.
amazing.
And I was like, wow, 8 years already. It's like, I feel like I'm only in the 2nd or 3rd year, but it's been 8 years.
It's because you kept the passion alive. You kept the newness of what it actually does. And that's what happens when you continue to clarify what you're trying to achieve with the podcast, right? It continues to, and then you continue to bring in new people into your world, so it keeps that
Oh, yeah.
freshness alive. And having co-host is a, again, it's a three-part, it's a three-part kind of I don't know what the word it's like a three-part course. You can't have the same course every single time, but when you have a new guest over, it's almost like you're having a new conversation, and you could be talking and telling the same story to a new person altogether, but it
Mhm.
feels fresh, and it feels like it's well received because
Yeah.
they want to share a story that they've shared hundreds of times before, but now we're a new person. So I think it's really good to hear that, because and to be able to continue a podcast for that long is absolutely amazing. I mean, when I started my first podcast with my cousin, my brother-in-law, this was 2012, and we were like, okay, we're in three different places, two different time zones. How do we create content? We didn't have cool tools like Ecan Live or Zoom or Squadcast or Zencaster might have been around. I can't remember, but um,
They were the
we
first
just
one, I think. So yeah.
we just didn't know about all the tools, and we're like, well, how do we record? Like, oh, we can do Hangouts, and Hangouts was kind of like Zoom, and then in order to record anything on Hangouts, found some tools. But then my brother-in-law was like, hey, we can stream to YouTube, and then we can then download the YouTube video and edit the audio. So again, it was a lot of work and a lot of processing, and it just again lasted for like 3-4 episodes. We're like,
Oh,
okay, it's not gonna work. But I mean, it's still out there. You can still listen to our cringy voices. But I was like, I want to create something that's gonna go on for a long time, or where I don't have to depend on other people, right? Because it sounded like you were counting on your son, and then your daughter stepped in, and I was counting on these two people. But then Gary Vaynerchuk told me, just document your journey, man. You don't need to wait on anybody. You don't need anybody's permission. Just do it. So I jumped in my car. I recorded my first episode without even thinking about what the episode or the podcast is going to be called. But there was enough stuff stacked for me to delve into and actually record that first episode.
yeah. I love that. Yeah. I think the hardest thing for me when Brandon stepped away from the show was I was so used to us tag teaming an interview, and like we'd go in with a plan, but because there's two of us hosting the episode and the interview, Brandon might come in from a different direction. I'm like, well, there go my 4 questions. Boom.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and
Yes.
and of course the guest is just rolling with it. It's like, well, this is all I know. So I'm just gonna follow
Yeah.
your lead and looking at both of us. Although they're
Exactly.
really looking at one screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when he stepped away, all of a sudden I had to learn how to interview on my own and think of my own questions. And I did okay. The first round, like I had a group of like 5 people stacked, and it was like not only was I interviewing for the first time on my own, it was a batch recording day. So I had like 5 of those guys lined up, and a lot of them didn't have the word yet that Brandon had stepped down from the show. So I was like, oh, I thought there were 2 of you guys. I'm like, yeah, well, things have changed. It's just me. Do you still want to do this? I'm up for it. Like, yeah, let's go for it. And
Yeah. Let's go for it.
I think the validation there was after that recording day, 3 of the 5 guests had said, thank you for that. I went deeper than I normally do on my other shows, my other appearances. And it felt like you already knew who I was and what my message was. And I was like, thank you so much for that. What I
Yeah.
didn't tell these guests was that for all 5 of them, I went out and I read their book if they had one. I listened to 2 or 3 interviews they had done on other shows. So my jumping off point was really almost like picking up where they left off on another show. Like,
Yeah.
so I heard you on such and such business leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about this. And so I give just enough background that my audience would know it. I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to go a little bit deeper. What did you mean by this phrase? And they're like, and I know it's a phrase that they would use. And they're like, oh man. And then they would just go down and tell that story. And then afterwards they're like, wow, I hadn't talked about it in a while, not to that depth. And I always
Yeah.
wanted to. And I was like, I got this. This will be fine. This will be fun.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. And yeah, and then getting into tools like Capshow, that's where we met, was in the Capshovian group. Huge eye opener, because one of the things I've been horrible at for years was the recording, editing. Got that down. I
Got
feel
that down.
good.
See, that's the easy stuff, right?
For me, yes. For everybody else, they're like, "I can't figure that out." I'm like, "That's my jam. I love that
Yeah.
part." But then afterwards, taking that episode and creating this thing called a title,
Hmm.
show notes or a summary up,
Yes.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And then Capshow just made that easy. And
Oh
then
my
what I
God.
really love about that platform is that community helped me understand how to market. Like, it's not just
Yeah.
blasting the world that, "Hey, go listen to my show." It was like,
No.
no, build connection with people, have conversations with people online that add value to them and bring value
Hmm.
to them. I'm like, "You mean so like what I normally do when I don't think about promoting my show?" They're like, "Yes, that." I'm
Yes,
like,
that thing.
"What? Let
You
me
know.
try this." And I'm like, "No way." And the engagement has just been climbing and the connection from that group to other
Yeah.
groups. This was the first podcast movement, the one I went to that we went to in
Hmm.
2023. It was the first time I felt like I was in the club in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
there's always that group that I would notice they're moving, they're shaking things up, they're propelling not only their own personal businesses, but they're
Hmm.
promoting and building each other up.
Yeah.
How do I get into that group? And I never knew how. And it turns out somewhere in the last 12 months, I stumbled into y'all. And I'm like, I'm in the club. I
You're in
don't
the
know how I
club.
got
Like,
there, but
look,
I'm in the
all the
club.
people around me is the one I
Yeah.
was looking up to, and now I'm hanging out with them. That's so
Yeah.
true.
Just blew my
It's
mind.
so true. And you know, I did a video earlier talking about the different philosophies that podcasting is, and you're giving me that experience of, you know, you've done this for 10, almost 10 years, and what it is for you, right? So I'm gonna ask you that question, but I'm looking at and I'm like, okay, podcasting is nurturing, it's uniting, it's collaborating, it's, you know, it's all of these things. And the reason why it is those things is because those are the things that you're either looking for or you bring it to the group. When I wanted to become a beekeeper, and you know, for you, you can share a story, but when I wanted to become a beekeeper, it took me to go and find other beekeepers to become one. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm part of the beekeeper club, right? What's going on? Right? You have to take that leap. You have to take that first step into clarifying what you want to be, what you want to do, and then seeking out those people that are gonna welcome you with open arms. Because like, oh my God, you want to be a beekeeper? Come right in. We'll tell you all about it. You know, because we as human want to empower and give all the tools that we know. I mean, your teacher literally says, "Ask me about podcasting," right?
Yes.
Because you are so transformed by this whole experience that you want to share it with the world as well.
Oh yeah. I've grown so much from the medium in the last 10 years. Not just on a technology scale, like learning the new tools as they come out,
Yeah.
but other things like soft skills. I'm a bit of a better listener now, listening for the story that's being told by somebody, listening for the key points that they're bringing to the forefront, or the unspoken thing that, uh, you know, that they're saying it without saying it, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So that's one thing I've picked up on, just my listening skills and being able to craft my own story. I still pick on myself for rambling. At the same time, when I
Yeah.
listen to myself now versus before, it's like, wow, I learned to tighten that message up, or I learned to like stop yapping too much. So I just yap a little bit. And then on top of that, the guests I've had on my show have really grown me. So when I get to talk to somebody like a Lee Cockerell from Walt Disney World, and I get to learn his philosophy of leadership, and it's like I could adopt some of those things. Then, talk to Jody Mayberry from the Jody Mayberry Show, and he's produced a bunch of other shows. It's like, wow, he's found a way to do podcasting full time, and he's an entrepreneur. He's left a banking job to become a park ranger, and now he's left park rangering, if that's a phrase, to do podcasting, and he just thrives in it. And it's just like, as I come across these different people, I'm learning something new about what's possible out there, and to share those stories and share those insights, whether it was a corporate job or, with my own family or just in my own life. Podcasting on a content level has just opened up my eyes to a larger world as well.
Yeah, it's just been amazing. And what's funny is that no matter which profession or which passion we find and we choose, we're going to bring all the elements of who we are and what makes us. And I think that's the power of being human. I mean, I'm not try to dilute it, but it's the beauty of human beings, right? We bring those stories and we bring what we love about all of that stuff. Man, it has been so much fun. I mean, the
Yeah.
motivations, the inspirations, the environment that you grew up in, it's been fascinating. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna share 3 hacks to take away for the superpreneurs listening. I'm Junaid Ahmed, host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast and a digital presence advisor at HumbleZone. This episode is brought to you by Home Studio Mastery. I launched a consultation and course program to help podcasters and course creators to create a space in their homes that'll reduce the friction of creating content and appearing their best when showing up on camera. The pandemic gave us a lot of issues, but this one is here to stay. We're now so much closer to our audience thanks to video becoming more popular and affordable. I help guide folks who want to create Hollywood-worthy studios to not only capture great content, but also build more confidence, more authority, and be more comfortable in front of the camera. If I can do it, you can too. And with my help, you can do it faster. So if you'd like to learn more, visit homestudiomastery.com and how you too can create a home studio that brings out your personality, professionalism, and possibilities. All right, welcome back to the episode. We've been talking here with Jerry Dugan. Jerry, it's been so much fun talking to you. Let's jump into the 3 hacks to share with the entrepreneurs. You've been podcasting for so long, and you've been, in the space that you're in for so long. Share 3 hacks that people, listeners, can take action on today.
Oh man, definitely the biggest one for me, and I don't know if it's a hack, it's more of like a foundational thing, and that is you got to know who you're serving. And for me to be able to describe that ideal customer profile as a person, so an avatar, I think is the term. A lot of people like to just glaze over that and say, I help people do this or I help people do that. And they focus so much on being able to say it in one sentence, which I think is important as well, because you got to be able to deliver to somebody in a short 2 to 3 second window what you do. But to be able to say, I'm helping a guy named AJ who's 35, married to his college sweetheart. They have 2 kids. One's in elementary school, one's in middle school. He's got a mid, like senior level type of leadership role in a corporation, high 6-figure income, got the 2 cars, the house, all the boxes checked for success. But deep down inside, he feels hollow. He feels like he's not living a life worth living. He wants to have a better home life, but he can't give up the job. He hates his job. He'd rather do something else. And then that goes really deep into like, what does this person listen to on the way to work? What are the hobbies and so on? And because I know all this about AJ, when I think about all the things I could talk about on my show or provide through my business, BTR Impact, which is a leadership development company, I can now hone it through the lens of AJ. What does AJ really need? He really wants to have that life that's worth living in his faith, family, and career. But the thing that's got the spotlight on him right now is his career. Okay, well, so AJ probably needs to hear about, how do I get things under control at work so that I can also focus on my family? Ideally, I'd rather have AJ think about his family first, and then the work is just the means to get bills paid. However, that's not where AJ is. AJ is thinking, like most of us in the US, thinking about work and career, and that has to be taken care of. So BTR Impact helps leaders get things under control at work, get things thriving at work, have teams that can take on extra duties without burning themselves out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now you're making an impact at work as well as at home. And so that's hack number 1. All that to say, hack number 1 is know your avatar, know who you're serving right down to that detail. Hack number 2, it's always learn. You never fully arrive. There's always going to be change. So be curious, keep learning. I'm a big fan of going to conferences, even if they're not in the field I'm in, because I like to take new information and say, I wonder how that applies to what I do over here. And I know there are a lot of folks who are very concrete, so if you work in the world of, say, business finance, going to a podcasting conference or a video con doesn't make sense to you.
Yeah.
However, you might learn things from a creative conference that could parallel, and that takes a lot of creativity. It's like, wow, what did I learn from the process of video editing that I could
Hmm.
apply to the workflow of finances? And
Yeah.
there's a way to bridge the gap. I mean, there's always something that you can learn from another arena to
Yeah.
enrich your worldview of where you are. And then the third one is definitely run with a group of people. One of the things I did when I left, and this might have been the game changer now that I think about it,
Hmm.
because I said earlier, I felt like finally I'm in the club, and I'm looking back in my head, and I'm like, what's different now that I didn't have a year ago?
Yeah.
And I joined a number of communities. Like, I paid to get into communities. So I think that was the big game changer. So I
Yeah.
left my corporate job October of 2022. Two different guys came out of the woodwork, and also Deirdre had I already signed up for Cap Show, and
Hmm.
then I learned that there was like this higher level of Cap Show that people engaged with and talked
Hmm.
not just how to use Cap Show, but they talked about how to market in general. I was like,
Yeah.
all right, upgrade now. and,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that was the Capshovian group. And then from there, I joined another group called Total Life Freedom with my friend Vincent Puglisi. Lots of folks in that group who are in other groups that I keep coming across them in. And so I paid for access into masterminds and coaching
Yeah.
groups. Not so many, but enough to give me, like, each one's different. Like, Cap Show is really focused around copywriting and marketing. Total
Hmm.
Life Freedom is really around how do you create recurring streams of income, which I'm still
Yeah.
years away from doing. But just to be in there and to listen to how Vincent talks, I'm like, he's thinking like on a whole different, not just whole
Different level.
different
Yeah.
level. He's talking multiple levels at the same
Yeah.
time. And I'm not talking
Yeah.
multi-level marketing. And then the Phoenix Club is like, Jody Mayberry runs it, but it has a lot of former Disney executives in there. So I've
Wow.
always wanted to learn about Disney leadership. I just happen to know the guy that runs the club that has a bunch of them in the club. And I'm like,
Isn't that cool?
oh, yeah. And so, and then of course the podcasting community with Podcast Movement, and just joined these different groups. And in a way, I've formed my own tribe, people who just want to live beyond the rut. And they're at different levels, either ahead of me or right behind me. And so that's huge. So I guess the three to sum up: the first one, know who you're serving and describe them to a very detailed. Be curious, keep learning is number two, and number three, build that tribe that's going to support you.
Yeah. Man, those are some powerful ones, and definitely ones that I can utilize and use myself. I've done a couple of them, but the other ones I haven't done. So absolutely a great reminder. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my
All right,
pleasure.
Jerry, we're going to jump into the rapid fire questions. These are on the spot. We're going to knock them out real quick.
All right, let's rule number one: cardio.
Number one, exactly. What is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
Oh, that I wish I got into playing guitar. I wish I knew how to play guitar, because then I could play so many sweet tunes for my wife. And
Yes.
yeah, that's
I
it.
can't wait. Can't wait. Number two, what did you want to be when you were a child?
Oh man, I actually became the thing. So when I was a child, my dad was in the Army. I always thought I was going to be a soldier, and then one day I
Mhm.
said I was never going to be a soldier. Got out of college, and I joined the Army. So I became a soldier.
Nice.
And yeah, so
Sweet.
I became the thing.
I love it. And number three, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Oh, good Lord. Only one? I
I know,
I didn't.
just one.
Yeah, man.
We'll
There's
have to
so
do
many,
another episode and talk about just those things.
just favorite movies and TV shows. But oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue, and I love that they did it. But what was the name of that show? I just loved how they went greedy with it. I want to say Battlestar Galactica, the reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Mhm.
There's one, oh, I remember now. Okay, it's only been 2 years. I'm a big fan of the book Dune, and Denis
They redid the
Villeneuve in 2021
yeah.
came out with Dune, and it is almost exactly how I pictured it. The ornithopters, the scope of the scenery, the
Nice.
feeling of the heat off the screen. Like, you almost feel the heat coming off the screen.
Wow.
Dune, 2021 version of Dune. There we go.
Nice. All right, next up, what movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Oh man, probably Dune. What character though? I have no idea. They probably put me in as the Baron or the Baron's Jester. Some little like spooky little dude, like side character. Like I wouldn't be a main character.
Sure.
Yeah.
Love
be a
how you're
podcast.
so humble, man. You're so humble. No, next one up. Who is your favorite superhero?
Oh boy, Captain America, because it's not just the strength, it's the moral character that he brings.
That's a
to them.
moral. Oh my God, that's so true. So true. And last question. If you are a board game, what would it be?
Ah man, Monopoly. I think a lot of what I learned about business and relationships, I learned from Monopoly. How to win, but not dominate everybody so much that they hate you.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I love it, man. Thank you, Jerry, so much for your time, your wisdom, your energy sharing in this podcast. I appreciate you. Where can people find you?
All right, my podcast is at beyondtherut.com. All my social media is there. Even the link to my business page, there's a big button somewhere that says work with me. Click on that, it'll take you there.
Love it. Thank you so much again, Jerry, for this opportunity, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Awesome. Cool deal.
Congratulations, you made it to the end of the episode. Thanks so much for listening to our guest on this episode. Please send me an email at junaid@hacksandhobbies.com to tell me what you loved about our guest today. You could find links mentioned in this episode on the hacksandhobbies.com website.